such a...
Good evening, Canada. Welcome back. Happy Monday. We're back to business as usual. I'm your host, Alex Melki, and this is Anchorman Canada. Now, I hope you've had a wonderful weekend. And in the words of the illustrious lyricist Marshall Bruce Mathers III, snap back to reality, because we're back to work. We're back to the schedule that we've had planned all along. And I've got a great show for you today because I've taken, once again, the best headlines, the top stories that have been clicked, that have been trending, that you guys have, girls have, and everyone in between have chosen as the articles that you deem the most interesting. And I've compiled them into an amazing video that I think you're really going to enjoy. What do we have for you today? Well, we're only a couple of days into fall, and already the weather has been a vicious, vicious asshole. I'm going to tell you all about the weather that's gone on this past weekend that's affected Canadians and how a megastorm is going to fuck up a lot of Canadians later this week. And we're also going to talk about something that I think, as a Canadian people, we need to discuss. How drunk is too drunk? What about having your naked body rescued from a storm drain? Is that too drunk? Because we need to decide, we need to set the bar, we need to set a standard for everybody to just agree on that that's too drunk. We're going to talk about that later. I'm really excited about that one. But first up, you know that old saying, don't drive and text. Don't drive and text, because if you do, you might kill somebody or you might kill yourself and everyone's gonna think you're an asshole. It's an age-old saying. People have been saying it for as long as cars and phones have existed. Now, the RCMP, they love that saying because they want to protect people. It's their job to protect people's lives. But they've implemented a new list. They've put out a new list that might go a little too far. People are kind of going, well, wait a second, hold up, guys. Can you calm down? Because this is an extensive list. Now, what this list is this is their list of distracted driving. Now, this is what they consider, the RCMP, Canada's finest. This is the list that they consider things that will distract you while you're driving and can cause you to have an accident, to derail off the road. Now, some of these are obvious, but some of these are a little bit more, I don't want to say ridiculous. I'm going to let you be the judge, okay? First up, eating and drinking. They don't want you wolfing down a poutine or swallowing up a double-double while you're driving, which is insane, I think personally, because how many times, do you know anybody that hasn't eaten in their car? The RCMP says that's too distracting. Makeup. Now, I have a newfound respect for women because I know what goes into it, all right? I have stepsisters. I know what it's like. There's about 3 inches of makeup going on. That's on your face, but that's fine. You do it for the whole world. You do it for yourself, and everyone loves you for it. But please, maybe keep it at home. Maybe don't do it in the car, is what the RCMP is saying, because you might murder somebody with your vehicle. Reaching for something. No, sorry about that. Talking to passengers is the next one here. And this one seems kind of ridiculous. If Samantha is talking to you about how Mike in accounting isn't returning her texts, the RCMP doesn't want you telling her what to do. Save it for after you park the car. Tell her Mike's not worth it after the car has been stopped. And then you have reaching for something in the back. If you drop your phone, they're saying don't reach it. I don't care if it's an emergency. Don't reach for your phone. Don't do it. Smoking, listening to music too loud, riding with your pet on your lap. The RCMP is saying, guys and girls, this is not the thing that you want to do because it's going to distract you. Now, I feel like this is just excessive because a lot of people can do both things, and maybe it's more of a common sense thing. Maybe they're just saying, guys, take a breather, think about what you're doing. If you're going to smoke a cigarette, maybe don't, spend too much time. Have your lighter there, be prepared, do it safely. But do you think that maybe they're going too far? Do you think that the RCMP is maybe pushing the limits? Let me explain why I'm talking about this at all, because this seems like, oh, whatever, how are they going to know? Let me pull this up. This is off the RCMP's website, okay? Now, what they say off their website, the legal impacts of distracted driving can vary from province to province, which makes sense, obviously. They're all going to have their own rules. But the fines can be as high as $500 and cost you 4 demerit points. And you can have your license suspended. So That's an extreme thing to happen to you just because you were eating or because you were drinking or because you were giving Samantha some dating advice. Do you think that's excessive, or do you think that's what we have to do because the greater amount of people in Canada aren't safe enough on the roads and you have to make the roads safer for everyone? Or is this excessive? Let me know in the comments, because this is something that everyone has to deal with. This isn't just people that are driving. These are people that are walking too. They have to deal with drivers on the road as well. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious what you think. Let's move on to story number 2. Now this one, this one's a doozy. It's important we talk about it because a lot of Canadians don't want to acknowledge that there is an opioid crisis in the country. It's a thing. It's been going on for a few years now. And the reason this is something that I'm pulling up here is that there was a national report that was put out by the government of Canada. And in this national report, there's an average of 3,000 Canadians a year that are affected, that are dead from a opioid, that's a hard word to say, opioid overdose. In 2017, it was nearly 4,000 people. And of those 4,000 people, 92% died by accident. They OD'd, they overdosed, okay? Fentanyl is a big one. And this is one you might have heard about, maybe you don't know what it is. Fentanyl is pain medication. And once it hits the streets, they mix it up with cocaine, they mix it up with heroin. And I'm sorry we're going a little dark here, but that's what they're calling a good time. That doesn't sound like a good time to me. That sounds like exhausting, but that's what's happening right now. And the reason I'm telling you about this is people are wondering where the hell this is coming from. Who's supplying everybody's fentanyl? Because this is medication. Global News released footage this morning of a robbery. Now, this guy clearly got his inspiration from The Dark Knight, shows up to a pharmacist, holds up what appears to be a gun, and threatens him and tries to rob him. Now, I'm going to describe to you a little bit. I'll show you the clip in a second, but basically what happens is the pharmacist gives in completely, he says, take whatever you want, he helps him, he's totally, he calls the cops after, he goes, hey, I got robbed, he took prescription drugs, he took a lot, It turns out the entire thing was faked. It was staged. Can we play the clip real quick? So here you see what's going on here. The guy is clearly just over the counter here, asking for the drugs. He has a mask on. The guy's filling the bag up right there with the prescription drugs. Okay, very, very clear, very obvious. He hands it off. He's not even trying to be a hero. He looks like a European soccer player. Hands in the air. He did nothing. Okay. Turns out that all of this is a lie, an elaborate scheme. And what happened was, this was 2014, if I'm not mistaken. 2014 is 4 years ago. So a lot has happened since then. Those drugs hit the market. Who knows where they ended up? And just to give you guys an idea, can we pull up a picture? Okay, so there you go. This is what fentanyl, I'm trying to figure this out. Yes. This is what fentanyl looks like. It's a little patch, and these are patches that you stick on, okay? And I don't know if they're opening them up and they're mixing them with other things. I don't know how it works. It's not my jam. But 5,000 patches were stolen, and on the street, that equates to roughly $1 million. $1 million that this guy, this pharmacist, was trying to make money off of. And it kind of begs the question, who can you trust in a situation like this? Because I thought the general consensus was pharmacists were the last ones that were going to do something like this. Apparently, that's not the case. Apparently, pretty much anyone that can get their hands on it is going to take advantage of a situation like this. So keep your mind open to things like this. And just to give you a heads up, a little insider on this one, where the cops got their break on this, and the reason this came out is because the robber, the guy who was wearing the mask, I don't know if he felt guilty, I don't know what it was, but he was the one who came forward and he presented the audio recording of him talking to the pharmacist. So pretty dark stuff going on in Canada, and hopefully this something gets sorted out quickly, because look, it went up almost 1,000 deaths, 200 deaths since last year. So it's ramping up slowly each year. It's a big issue. And speaking of big issues, big weather problem going on this weekend. And it's Canada. We have our fair share of weather problems. That's not like a new thing for us. But I was leaving work on Friday, and I'm upstairs getting a coffee just before I'm leaving. And can we pull this up real quick? So this is a picture that popped up on the TV, and I've seen alerts come up before. This looks a little extreme, and every time something like this comes up, even whether it's on the weather app on my phone or whatever, it's always like extreme, chance of a tornado, it might be crazy. You're always like, okay, well, calm down, because it's never that bad. And that's the same thing that happened when I saw this. Yes, it was extreme. They cut whatever was on TV, like it's a post-apocalyptic movie going on. And this pops up, and I go, whatever, I brush it off. Man, 2 tornadoes landed in Ottawa Friday, and it was insane. The first one landed in Gatineau, the second one in Ontario, and it did some serious, serious damage. It tore roofs off houses, flipped cars over, it unearthed trees. Look at this, is devastating. This is like pretty bad. This is the worst storm to hit Ottawa. And I have here 300 buildings were completely destroyed. Completely. Like people lost their homes. This is just terrible. We're looking at 175,000 houses were without power Friday. It was down to 70,000 on Sunday, even less this morning. I think they were at about 3,600 in Ottawa alone that were without power. But even worse than that, and it's starting to get cold. That's one thing. But what's worse is that it's going to take a really long time to figure this out, to get people back into their houses. Where are they going to set up? What's being done? This is something that's going to need to be worked on by the government as well. Now, I have a clip here just to show you how intense it was. This is closer to Quebec. This is crazy. Like, this is really, just to give you a sense of the context here, because when people say this is the worst storm to hit Ottawa, you need some context to understand what's going on. Show me the next one here with the woman. Yes, we have one here, and this one is pretty crazy. I don't know if can they hear this, or is there? Yeah, there's audio. Terrifying. I literally would be crapping my pants watching this.
Well, she almost did. Look at the end.
Insane. Scary stuff. Like legitimately scary stuff. Like this is serious. And so the good news is I did a little bit of research online, and it turns out something like this is normally covered under home insurance. House insurance is going to cover things like strong winds, gusts, tornadoes even. The bad news is so much damage was done. So many houses were destroyed. It's going to take such a long time to get this fixed. So the silver lining is, yes, they're probably not left out in the cold, but the downside of it is they literally probably will be left out in the cold physically until everything gets resolved, and who knows how long. And the fight between Canada, sorry, this is another transition answer, but the fight between Canada and air is not over. That was a terrible, terrible weekend, and there's going to be something else that's going to be probably much, much worse coming later this week. So I swear, it's like we pissed off Zeus for liking maple syrup, because close to 60,000 Canadians are about to get really, really fucked up, potentially. And millions more, because a super typhoon is pummeling through the Pacific, heading straight for Japan and Taiwan. Now, here's some footage. Obviously, we don't have footage yet. It hasn't happened yet. This is from the hurricane or the typhoon that hit, this was China last week. So this is not a good month. This is the third one hitting this month in that area of the world. That was a Category 5. This next one is going to be a Category 5. You're looking at landslides. You're looking at flooding. You're looking at like property destruction. I don't know if you can see that this one here is nuts because the whole building is shifting. Now, there hasn't been an official alert put out by the government, by the Canadian government, but the Taiwanese government, if I'm not mistaken, said you should just be aware. Just be aware that this is going to be going down. The typhoon could still spin, but it's heading straight for them. So we don't know what the damage is going to be like, but it's already at a Category 4. It's going to jump up to a Category 5, and this is potentially what it's going to look like again for a lot of people. Not just the 60,000 Canadians that are going to be in the path, but everyone else. Now, so far Canada is 1-for-0 with the wind. Hopefully we get a pass with this one, because it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with in a week, all right? Let's move on to something a little bit lighter, okay? We got through the heavy stuff. It's Monday. Fun fact, Canada is actually the top it was named the top filming location for Hollywood movies in 2017. And the cool thing about that is that no one probably really expected it, because the whole world is a filming location for Hollywood. But what happened here is that Film LA, which is a non-profit organization, they track all the trends of every movie industry number that's been going around, budgets, and what's being shot. And according to their list here, Canada is at the top of it. And this is out of 100 domestic movies that topped the box office last year. 20 of them, so 20% of the movies, were shot in Canada. And that's really cool because Canada likes to represent on a global stage. If you see right there, 2017, it's been going up since 2013, except for 2014. I don't know what happened in 2014, but we're doing better. And so you have half of the movies that were shot in BC, obviously. The rest were a split between Quebec, Manitoba, and Ontario. And the reason for that, there's a couple of reasons. There's an obvious one. The less obvious one, obviously, let's be honest here, Canada has beautiful landscapes. They're hard to compare. We have beautiful landscapes. But the main reason that Canada is at the top of the list is tax breaks. Now, I'm going to pull this up for you right now. This is from the Canadian Film or Video Production Tax Credit provides eligible productions with a fully refundable tax credit. And the way this works is that they they return 25% of whatever's being spent on production, post-production, and when half the movie on a big budget like this is done in post-production, that means a couple of things. That means the studios are saving a lot of money during the production because of the money they're getting back. And this is also generating a lot of money for Canada by creating all these jobs, which is very cool. And second, as you saw there as well, you had Georgia, state in the US, and the UK was third, which means that we're doing pretty good for ourselves, you know? Yes, it's comparing a country to a state and a country as well. So we're up there. We're up there. Here's another story for you. Talking about Canada on the world stage. Once again, I just got to sneak it in. 23 days until weed is legalized in Canada. And you know what? The closer we get to it, you're going to have people talking about it. I'm talking about it. Lots of people are talking about it. There's lots of stories to talk about. What's to talk about this time? This one is very interesting because now we're getting into the practicality of it. How are things going to run in a post-weed legalization world in Canada, right? So the main thing is that each province is going to run things a little bit differently. BC, Alberta, and Ontario are going to work with the government. So in those provinces, storefronts and online distributors are going to have to be working closely with the government in order to be able to sell weed. Outside the other provinces, you're going to be able to have private owners and distributors that are going to be able to do their own little, mom and pop shop weed distributions. But in BC, Alberta, and Ontario, it has to work with the government. So it's going to go one of two ways right now. These are the two people that are at the head of the races. You have LCBO and you have Shoppers Drug Mart. And there's going to be two very different ways of doing this. So Shoppers Drug Mart, as per this lovely photo that we have displaying, so you have the pharmacist, you're going to walk in, and it's going to work exactly as though you were filling a prescription. So you're going to walk up to the counter, and you're going to sit down with a pharmacist, you're going to say, hey, doc, this Saturday, I'm looking to get really, really blazed with the boys. There's a new Netflix special that's coming out, and we just want to get just a nice level of high. And he's gonna say, well, Alex, how about this sweet Candyland Kush? It's gonna get you right where you need to go. I recommend 7 grams because it's gonna be a long weekend. And you say, thanks, doc, and you walk off, right? The other experience, this is LCBO, the way they're gonna do it, it's gonna be a lot like if you go into McDonald's or any modernized fast food joint these days, they have one of those giant iPads. And the way it's gonna work out is you walk up, they're gonna have people at the counter as well, but you walk up to the giant iPad thing and you input the order that you want, and you want this much or whatever, and then you pick it up at the end. They're also gonna make it so that you can order it from home and they'll deliver it to your door and you don't even have to speak to anyone, right? Now, this is giving people two different ways of doing it, but it's also creating a dialogue in what people think is appropriate and not appropriate. One half of the people are saying, hey, look, it should be regulated because when you go to speak to a pharmacist, they can tell you how much you should take, and it's going to limit how much you are going to intake, right? Whether you're smoking it, whether you're ingesting it, whether it's edibles, whatever. It's more controlled. when you go through the LCBO route, it's a little bit more freeform, and you're the one deciding. You also don't have to explain to anyone or justify what it is you're consuming or how you're consuming it. Now, the people are saying, okay, well, is it riskier not having somebody judge it first, especially if this is people's first time consuming marijuana? A lot of people are going to try it for the first time. They've never tried it before legalization, right? So what I want to do is I want you guys to leave comments in the comment section, because I'm curious what you think, because this is seriously going to be a very divisive topic for a lot of people, and it might even cause a rift in the weed community after it comes out, in terms of a more regulated weed versus a more freeform weed. So let me know in the comments what you plan on doing or what your opinions on it are, and how do you feel about this is being handled by the government as well? Do you think that they're dealing with this properly, or do you think they're being they're dealing with it haphazardly and they're just kind of tossing it around like it's nothing? Let me know. And here's a story that I'm excited about. This is one that I wanna bring to you. Naked Drunk Guy. Now, Naked Drunk Guy is a story that I found that I think that a lot of Canadians are it's gonna resonate with a lot of Canadians. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the different stages of drunk, there's tipsy, there's drunk, and then there's cops fishing your naked body out of a storm drain drunk. Now, there was no picture for this story, unfortunately, so I had to make one. If you can bear with me, can we pull up that picture that I made? So there you go. So first and foremost, just a PSA, if you're going to Google naked guy for a funny Photoshop, just beware, you're going to see a lot of penises. That's just part of the game. But this is essentially a recreation, a reenactment of what I believe the police came to last night at 10 p.m. Now, here's this story. I'm gonna lay it out for you. I'm gonna show you what this looked like, what the scene looked like. This guy, let's call him Chad, because his name was not released. Let's say Chad and his buddies were they were getting shit-faced, all right? It's a Sunday night. What do you do on a Sunday night? You get shit-faced. Chad and his buddies decide to drink, and they go out, and his buddies say, hey, you know what, Chad? Let's make a bet. I bet you can't take all your clothes off and get into that storm drain. Now, maybe he took his clothes off because he didn't want to get them dirty. Maybe he had that much reason in him. But for whatever the case is, he took his clothes off and he got into that storm drain. And then he got stuck. And what did his friends do? Did they help him out? No. They stole his clothes and they ran off. And then the Ontario Provincial Police started getting calls. I don't know how long he was in there for. I don't think he knows either, because he was pretty gone. But people walking by, neighbors started seeing a naked man in the storm drain, and the cops showed up. They let him out. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Now, the reason this is, it could have been much worse than it actually was, is that storm drains, the police announced, or let everybody know, because I don't even really know what a storm drain is. I guess, you see them, you assume rainwater, that's exactly it. They're used to move massive amounts of water from rivers when there's lots of rainfall. When it fills up heavily, it flows down through the storm drain. What did we have a lot of this past weekend? A lot of rain. Okay, so this could have ended terribly for Chad, but thankfully it didn't, and he gets to be a Canadian for hopefully a few more days. Hopefully his friends don't set him on another daring bet. Chad, you gotta be better than that. You gotta be better than that, Chad, because you're Canadian, and what else do we have if we don't have that? That's it for tonight's episode. I hope you liked it. I had a good time. I hope I managed to compress the best of today's front page for you. Give us a follow on Instagram. Like us on Facebook. Sub us on YouTube. All the likes, all the articles that I talked about tonight are going to be on our website. You can check them out. You can read a little bit more into them. And if you liked what went down here, share it with maybe a friend or an estranged family member you haven't talked to in a while. I love you guys. I'm going to see you tomorrow for another episode. Take it easy.